Okay, phase three of a plan is as follows. And this I've titled the revive phase, and I think this will take a minimum of 5 years to implement and will continue on as we progress. The whole point of this particular phase is to restore democracy, security, dignity, and prosperity. And this will encompass every sector in society against a set of clear, unambiguous, and measurable targets. And I'll give you an example of the sort of targets that I'm talking about. So, for example, reduce crime, sexual crime by 75%, violent crime by 50%, fraud by 60% by 2035. 0% net migration by 2030, reduce the carbon footprint by 50% by 2035, 0% poverty, 0% homelessness by 2035, reduce unemployment by 75% by 2035, financial targets for inflation, economic growth, and tax targets, for example, by year as we progress towards 2035. An increase in birth rate to 2.4 children per family, and at the same time, a restriction of birth rate for the migrant community to 3.5 children by 2035. Reduce the benefit state by 50% by 2035, and, for example, reduce traffic accidents by 50% by 2035. So they're the targets. But this will embrace all of the sectors in society, some of which I'll cover now. You just also need to be cognizant of the fact that any change in any sector will have an influence and an effect on all the other sectors, and so you have to plan this as an entire plan, a strategic plan. If you do it in isolation, sectors in isolation, what you will find is as you're progressing through, things will one may very well have a negative effect on another sector. So I'll give you some examples of the sectors I'm talking about. Education. I encompass universities, schools, preschools, and I'll give you some examples of the sort of things that we need to do. So review of curricula to ensure balanced education across the spectrum. Teaching should be based on British history, language, culture, and law, and also should include multiculturalism. Less ideological teaching, more competition, and get our children to learn how to fail. We need to look at the output of the education system, and we need to be able to produce the spectrum of workforce. So, for example, skilled labour, social care, artisans, IT, AI, doctors, lawyers, and our future CEOs. I also think we need to incorporate state-funded extracurricular activities, and I include things like sport and performing arts within that, so that every child in the United Kingdom has that opportunity. Demography, I've mentioned birth rates in the targets, but for example, we need to look at state-funded childcare, which will enable our mothers and our women to be able to work and have children at the same time. One of the reasons that our birth rate is so low is because women will choose to not be in a family. They will choose to work as opposed to having children. But we need to shift that balance over to the left and restore the value of the family unit. And there are various examples of where this has been successful in Sweden, for example, and Japan, and this kind of policy, i.e. the state-funded childcare. In the NHS, that's going to require more change management and efficiency. Multiculturalism needs to change, and what I mean by that is that rather than the situation we have at the moment, multiculturalism needs to exist within the envelope of British culture and British law, rather than that sitting alongside all the other cultures at the same time, because you then get disparities. So multiculturalism, yes, but it needs to be embraced within the envelope of British culture and British law. Defence and security, yes, we need to develop our defence forces. We need to develop our security, particularly the police, and we need to empower the police. We need to depoliticise the police and restore their integrity, because I think they've taken a real hit in the last few years. We need to incorporate, I think, our veterans community within our national security services. Going back to veterans, I think we need to implement a new veterans care program or policy, which will include pensions, medical support for ongoing injury, mental injury and physical injury, accommodation for those that are homeless, and employment. And I've already mentioned how we can employ the veterans community within society and within the construct of national security and national defence. We need to restore our media, particularly our national media, so that we're getting a balanced view and we're not being indoctrinated or pushed to one political view or the other. We need to restore transparency, and what I mean by that is our government needs to be beholden to us to expose their progress and what they have and what they haven't achieved, so we can restore some integrity back into the country and a trust in our government. And also, we need to create the environment where politics on every side of the spectrum, whether it be left, right, far left, need to be able to express their views freely, even if we totally disagree with them, because it provides us with checks and balances, political checks and balances, as we move forward. For those of you that don't think that this plan is possible, I would ask you to take a look at the Jewish community. So despite the Holocaust, decades of conflict, centuries of oppression, Israel is probably the most successful nation globally. They're involved in the very top of financial institutions. They are the top 10 of commercial institutions. Jewish Muslims live in peace and harmony within the community, and they are represented in all aspects of society. There's no terrorism, crime is negligible, and Israel embraces equality, feminism, LGBTQ, multiculturalism, probably more than any other country in the world, and they all flourish within a peaceful and secure environment. The Jewish people are the first priority for the government. They are the priority for their government. They have the best army, the best police force, the best intelligence services in the world. Anti-Semitism, and I'm going to drift onto this slightly, is generated not only by those who hate them, but actually by those that are jealous of them. And I think that is, from our perspective, from British perspective, not a bad place for us to aspire to be. There is a great irony that those that promote progressive ideologies hate a nation that is actually the world's shining example of those progressive ideologies in action. Anyway, that completes this brief. I welcome your comments, I welcome your criticisms and disagreements, and look forward to hearing from you.